We created a reception desk for Edcaw's Law. Here we're picking out the lumber we're gonna make it from. The main frame of it, you could see here, is made of just regular cabinet grade plywood. And we skinned the frame with poplar and ash, that you could see on the back. And Adam is cutting the pieces over here. We had to put tape on the wood. We used the actual curve of the desk that we built. We used it as a mold to create the 3D millwork that goes in the front of the reception. And here we're cutting the pieces, rough cutting them, and making sure that they add up to the angle that we actually draw on that reception desk. We're cutting the 45s on the end of the stripes here, because the 3D millwork, it wraps around on the short side and also about half of the front of the actual reception desk. Here shows where we put the tape down when we used it as a mold, so the glue doesn't go on the finished surface. Here we laid it out roughly on how this is going to play out, just dry fitted, basically with spacers. We're just going through the motion here with how we're going to clamp it, so when we actually doing a method of clamping and gluing, we know what we are doing, and we're just testing the procedure out here. You could see we put those bars across to keep all the pieces are the same pressure all around. Interestingly enough, we found out that you can actually glue quite well to the hardwood surface, even if it's stained. We use our own mix in the stain. We use pigment, and it's only the pigment that stays in the wood. The denatured alcohol evaporates, and that allows the glue to actually penetrate the wood and make a good fusion between the two pieces. And here are actually marked the pieces now. We had to do a lot of fitting and marking on this just to make sure that they were perfectly fitted. It definitely took a few hours, and we had to cut a few custom slices here and there so we could make it a better fit and a better clamping method. Here we are gluing up the actual stripes. We're using Type 2 to glue up the stripes. The first one was very important because everything else was aligned to that with the spacers that we made between. And these pieces are American ash, and we're just fitting them on the corners. You could see there with the 45s. And the 45s were not, we had to custom fit the next corner because it has an arch to it. So the 45 was actually a little bit more, but that gave us a good guidance on how to do that. And then we also lightly pin nailed it so it stayed in place while we were clamping it down with those crossbars that you could see there. It's a tiny little motion, but it helped us a lot on having these pieces not sliding around. Then we brought the piece into the finishing room, and I used a crystal dull post-cat conversion varnish, which is, sometimes we use that, sometimes we use the Melassi that you could see on the screen here. That's an Italian finish. We really like that. It's a waterborne product, catalyst product, but it's waterborne, very high quality finish. We like to use both of those with the dull sheen features. And here you could see the actual desk part that matches the inside radius. And you could see the finished body of the reception desk. I'm spraying the edges first. It's always good to spray the edges first before you spray the top, because then you don't have overspray when you try to do it in the reverse sequence. And we typically spray 3 coats. This is the bottom of the desk. So I sprayed 3 coats on that, and then here's the seal coat on the reception desk. And that takes about an hour to fully dry. And then we come back and did a couple of those coats. And now we're gonna do the final coat on this. And we always find out if it's final the next day, just to come back when it's fully dried. And if you have any imperfections, then we scuff it up and we do another coat of finish. It really depends how the wood absorbs the finish. Sometimes some parts are drier than others, and that way the finish doesn't look the same and doesn't feel the same. Here I'm staining the inside. The reason why we finished the outside first, because the stain, we didn't want the stain to bleed over to the other side. And when you seal the front of the desk, even if a little bit of a finish goes on the short side of the reception desk, we just wipe it off with a rag. It wouldn't create a darker effect. And here I decided to spray the finish on just because when you try to stain something and it runs off, because it's a custom color, the denatured alcohol evaporates really fast and it leaves marks if you don't pre-stain it like what I'm doing here with the gun. And you will see here in a minute where I'm actually going to come back and do an actual staining with the staining pad and give it the true color of it. And you can see it here. I'm working feverishly to get this done. But this gave us a really nice finish on the inside. The inside was actually made of a maple, half-inch maple plywood. And it came out real good after we finished spraying it. But that's the reason of spraying the finish on first. Then we went into making the cap. The reception desk had a cap on it. It's also made of ash, matching the desk part that's inside, and we decided to use the domino festool system to glue together the shorter side of the cap. And you could see Adam here putting dominoes in and gluing them in. And then we decided to clamp them so it's a nice tight fit. You could see it clamping it here with a couple of clamps. Here we are rough grinding the cap on the underside. We usually grind these pieces first, and then we do the final sanding on them. And right now we're grinding it with 80 because these are also glued up from boards. We like to grind the seams nice and flat. And then we sand the cap with 80 up to 150. And we like to go up to 150, sometime 180. It gives a nice smooth feel to it. You also put a rand over on the cap so it's easy and comfortable for the hand. If somebody touches it, there's no sharp corners. And here we delivered the reception desk. We had to carry it up in a fire escape because it wouldn't fit through any doors except the emergency door. And I had to call some of my buddies to help me out and bring it up. It was quite heavy. And we're just unwrapping the main body of the reception desk here. And we are installing the desk part, which is basically just goes in a couple of ledgers on the inside. We put a nice grommet hole there so they can place their computers and monitors for the receptionist. And we screwed in from the bottom through the ledgers. It was a nice fit. And then we ended up putting the cap on site. And that's basically where we drilled holes on the top and screwed them down straight to the main body of the reception desk, and then we plug the holes and sand them down. On this video, you can see it being done and here oiled, and then we sanded. Once we sanded down the plugs, and we just used polymerized linseed oil with beeswax, about 2-3 coats of that, and it gave a very nice finish.